Good morning and welcome. I am Maddie Beagley, Student Body President, and I would like to thank you all for attending the Candidates Forum. I am pleased to be here today, and I know we are going to have a great forum. In the last several years, Iowa Western has worked hard to increase the number of Iowa Western students who actively participated in elections by voting. In past elections, we were pleased to have a large number of Iowa Western students vote. I believe we are an important and growing part of the electorate in Iowa. It's vital that we stay informed and involved in our government. On behalf of Iowa Western, we would like to thank the legislators for all of their hard work and the progress they have made in the recent years for community colleges. We'd also like to recognize Iowa Western's Media Studies program for recording today's event and broadcasting it live on CBTV Channel 17. Because of their support, we are streaming this event live at each of our Iowa Western centers, including Shelby County, Cass County, Page, Fremont County, and Clarinda. Thank you, CBTV 17. The Student Development Hour will end promptly at 10:15 a.m., which will allow you to make it to your next class. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise. On this day, September 11th, marks the 13th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Iowa Western, please join me in recognizing a moment of silence for those who have fallen. Thank you. You may be seated now. The ground rules for the forum are as follows. Each candidate here today represents the voters in our Iowa Western District. We'd like to thank you in advance for your participation and for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to give an opening statement. You will be timed and we have a stopwatch. If the candidate goes over 3 minutes, I will say stop and we will go to the next candidate. After the opening statements, I have 3 questions that we have prepared for the legislators to respond to. Once again, each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond. We will now start the forum with your opening statement. Please introduce yourself and include your position on the role of community colleges' impact on the Iowa economy. We will begin with Representative Jack Drake.
Well, thank you, and I want to congratulate you for going forward and improving your abilities to have jobs down the road. And so I would tell a little bit about me. I farm out in western Iowa, not very far from Cass County. Matter of fact, our farm's a 400-acre farm. I live in between 4 towns, and our farm's in 3 different school districts. So I get a chance to compare a lot of the things that happen. As I say, I'm a lifelong farmer. One of the things I do remember several years ago, I wanted to take some courses from Iowa Western, and I took 2 courses, but I needed a little different schedule than what you were offering, because as a farmer, I like to finish harvest by about Thanksgiving time. That's when I'd like to went to school. And then in the 1st of April, I go back to the field. And your semester time didn't work very good for mine. It was hard for me to study sometimes in that first part or the last part of the semester. So we have 4 children, and I'm a very strong supporter of our community colleges. We have 1 son and a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law are graduated of community colleges, not all Iowa Western. We have 4 grandchildren that have went to community colleges, and so the thing I like about the community colleges is many of the students wind up back in Iowa and stay here. That part I really like. And the other thing of it is, you can take these courses and get well on your way if you decide you want a 4-year degree. You don't have to, it's a long ways to other 4-year colleges from here. So with that, I'm going to stop. I look forward to answering your questions.
And good morning. I'm Greg Forrestal. I live over by Macedonia. My district, District 22, includes the very eastern 2 precincts in Council Bluffs, and then most of the rest of Potawatomi County. I have a long association with Iowa Western Community College. I was on the board here for 5 years, and then I got kicked upstairs to the State Board of Education, where I representative of all the community colleges on the State Board of Education. And in my 8 years in the legislature, I've been on the Education Committee. I've served as chair of the Education Committee, so I have a great deal of interest in the community college, a long association with the community college. And I will tell you frankly that everyone at this table up here, or all this whole long line of tables, will be in support of community colleges, because community colleges is where it's at in Western Iowa, certainly within the Iowa Western Community College District. So we will all, don't be afraid of who you vote for. Don't be afraid that they will not support Iowa Western, because we all understand that Iowa Western is where it's at when it comes to colleges. So I look forward to the other questions, and look forward to talking more.
Good morning, and thank you to Iowa Western and to the Iowa Western student body for hosting this event and for inviting us here today. And I'd like to, before I begin my remarks, just add a note to the remembrance that we took a couple of minutes ago for those fallen on September 11th. This date in our nation's history has become a date of service and remembrance, and not only for those who were lost on that tragic day in 2001 in New York City at the Pentagon and in that field in southwestern Pennsylvania, but also it's a day to once again thank and remember our brave men and women in uniform around the world who are whose service and sacrifices have helped to defend the freedoms that we hold dear. And I know that there are veterans and there are those currently serving in the military in this audience. And so I just like to take the opportunity to and especially on this day, to say thank you for your service and your sacrifice on our behalf, on behalf of our nation. I am State Representative Mary Ann Hanusa. I represent House District 16 in the Iowa House of Representatives. This is a district that is roughly the eastern and southern portions of Council Bluffs inside the city limits. And I'm proud to say that it does include the campus of Iowa Western Community College. I have served in this role for 4 years. I am a fifth-generation Iowan. I'm a native of Council Bluffs. I was educated here in the Council Bluffs schools. I have earned a bachelor's degree in education and a master's degree in American history, and I've spent my career in public service. I currently work for the Council Bluffs Community Schools. Iowa has an outstanding system of community colleges, which are truly the envy of other states. Your college, Iowa Western, is a remarkable institution and a shining star among Iowa's 15 community colleges. I have supported and voted for community colleges because they provide quality education and offer the opportunity to learn specific technical skills that are needed to further careers. And I know what a vital role, we all know up here, what a vital role community colleges play as many continue to face a tough economy and some need to retool or increase their skill sets. Iowa's community colleges are uniquely positioned across our state to provide the education to our students who will fill our jobs of critical need. So thank you again for having us here today.
It is great to be here today, and we've had a couple of pretty good years for community colleges in the state of Iowa. The year before this one, the 2013 session of the legislature provided an historic level of resources for community colleges. For the first time, the state started investing in adult basic education. You know, we have a workforce in Iowa of about 1.8 million people. You know, there's the young folks that are students in school, and there's the old folks that are retired. And when it's all said and done, we've got a workforce of about 1.8 million people. 300,000 of those people don't have a high school diploma or a GED, or a high set, as they're calling it now. 300,000 people, 1 out of 6 workers in the state of Iowa doesn't have that basic credential to move on in our society, to take that first step on the economic ladder. So for the first time, we were able to invest in adult basic education. We provided about $20 million in new dollars for training programs in the state of Iowa, and it was literally probably the best year in the history of the state for community colleges, the 2013 session. We were also able this year to kind of continue making progress on that front, not as dramatic as it was in 2013, but pretty significant. We did it by working together across party lines, not in opposition to each other, and dare I say, not like Congress in Washington, D.C. We set aside our differences. We have differences. We set those differences aside and work together, and it was the best year in history for community colleges in the state of Iowa. So I'm very proud of that record. I'm also a little bit hesitant to talk very much because I think I'm the only one at the table here that's not on the ballot this year. I'm in the state Senate. I'm the majority leader in the Iowa Senate. I represent Council Bluffs and Carter Lake, but senators are up every 4 years, House members are up 2 years, and so I'm not actually on the ballot. So I'll stop there, but thanks all for being here, and thanks for the sinners that were in the back moving up front here at church. So.
Well, I'm John Blue, and I am an alumni of Iowa Western. I graduated in 2009 from their turf grass and landscape program. I have a son that graduated in 2011, I believe, from here. He was in the cross country and track. Stepdaughter graduated just last year from Iowa Western. I'm a member of the Pi Theta Kappa fraternity, honor society. I was on the honor roll. Iowa Western helped to train me, retrain. When you're 53 years old and you find yourself out of a job, you know, and it's kind of hard to move back into the thing. And so I came out here and got into the turf and landscape program. While out here, I got to know a lot of other students that were in other programs like the building trades and welding and some people in the aviation part. And I've seen that they've gone on to succeed in either starting their own business, which is what I did, or working really successfully for other people in other fields. I look out here now and I see students that, in this class out here in the audience that went to school with some of my boys. Iowa Western will always be an important part to me, and I'll do whatever I can to keep the colleges, community colleges going here. And I also admire your athletic program very highly too. So I'll leave it with that.
Well, first of all, I'm Charlie McConkey. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Kinney, Adam Long, the Director of Students Affairs, and the student body for inviting me here today. You know, I'm running for the office of State Representative from District 15. That area encompasses Carter Lake and the northwest portion of Council Bluffs. You know, I was born in Carter Lake, and I've lived my entire life in Council Bluffs. And I'm a product of Iowa Western Community College. My wife had earned her degree here. 2 of my daughters attended here. And over the years, I continued my education here, earning my CE credits with real estate, EPA, and healthcare. So I know how important this community college is to Council Bluffs in southwest Iowa in providing the needed skills to grow the economy and create skilled workforce. It is needed in Iowa so Iowans can compete for jobs nationally and globally. My volunteers and I have knocked over 5,000 doors during this campaign. And my message at the door is going to be, the message at the door I want you to hear is what I want to hear, I want to tell you today. Our community colleges are important. The education is important, and I will work to bring skilled jobs to Council Bluffs and work with Iowa Western to provide the needed training to fill those jobs. You know, I'm committed to make sure all community colleges in Iowa have the support it needs to create a skilled workforce and to draw good employers that pay a livable wage.
Are you good?
Yep, done.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Marty Narenstone. I'm running for House District 16 as the challenger to Marianne Hanusa. I would also like to thank the student body government and the community college and everyone here for attending and participating. It's very important to our democratic process. I've been a resident of Council Bluffs for 30 years. I chose to live here like many of you and many people who live in Council Bluffs. I attended high school, graduated from high school, from public high school in Washington, D.C. I graduated college from Oberlin College. During my college time, I did take some courses in the summer at the local community college. After college, I enlisted in the United States Army. I spent almost 4 years active duty, including tours in the States and 2 years in Germany. After I got out of the service, I was an Iowa resident by then, and I went to Iowa City and went to law school using my GI Bill benefits. So I've been an attorney. I've been in Council Bluffs for 30 years. I've been an attorney for about 32 years. I was a legal aid attorney for 21 years, and I'm now in a solo practice here in Council Bluffs for about the last 11 years. I have spent my entire adult life in public service. My legal aid experience, as well as now, emphasizes the rights of children and adults who might not otherwise have access to legal representation. And my legal experience expands a wide range of expertise, including juvenile law and a wide variety of education issues, such as access to education, special education, bullying, and discrimination. Since I've been in Council Bluffs, I've also taken advantage of some of the community college community self-improvement classes, and I certainly appreciate that. I believe that the role of the community college is extremely important, and not only is this campus in District 16, but it's also in my precinct. So I'm a neighbor of this campus and have watched it grow and expand, and it's very exciting to see. I have friends who are students and staff and faculty on this campus, and I look forward to the dialogue this morning.
Good morning. I'm Tim Ennis from Corning, Iowa. I'm running for Iowa House District 21. My campaign motto is preserve the best, improve the rest. I believe in adequate, proper funding of all levels of public education. I believe that public education is one of the primary things that makes the United States of America great. I particularly believe that as things change over time, we need to re-examine the level of certain portions of the education, and that would be community colleges and pre-kindergarten and that role in education. I think both of those need to be looked at, and I would be in favor of a greater funding and maybe greater funding than we have now in those two areas particularly. I believe that I can represent the best interests of the Democrats, Independents, and Republicans in House District 21. It's a reconfigured district after the 2010 census that's about 90 miles long. If you know where Walnut, Iowa is, and Atlantic, Iowa, on the west, or if you know where Creston or Lorimer, Iowa on the east, that's how the district runs, 90 miles long, 30 miles wide. I look forward to the rest of the discussion this morning. I thank the people who planned this and are putting it on. I think it's great that the community college students here and at SWIC and Creston take a special interest in what these elections mean for them. Thank you.
The next question of the forum is, will you support funding community college general state aid at the level provided in the formula adopted by the State Board of Education? Tim Ennis, please start.
Yes.
It's my understanding the legislature always reviews funding recommendations from the State Board of Education as well as those of the governor. As you may know, the budget cycle is July to June, and so we are now, for the fiscal year, so we are now in fiscal year 2015. In the 2014 budget cycle, which was July 2013 to 2014, there was no increase recommended, so there's status quo funding at about $193.3 million. Now, for the current cycle, when the legislature was in session, the Senate recommended a $16 million increase, and Mike will correct me if this is very difficult to find out information about some of these bills. If you've ever done a legislative search, it's tough. I hope to do something about that. Anyway, the ultimate budget passed was an $8 million increase of $201.3 million. Frankly, it is my understanding that my opponent voted against increases. The Democrats have always worked to keep this education accessible to all Iowans. I intend to continue that as well.
I want to thank Marty for taking all my thunder with the numbers, but yeah, the State Board of Education adopted a formula many years ago, and it hasn't changed. The State Board of Education and the governor submitted a budget for the next fiscal year for community colleges of $193.3 million, and the legislator boosted that up to $8 million to $201.3. If we don't provide quality education for our children, we're bound to fail economically. Education is the best economic growth tool available today. So we need to provide adequate funding. Thank you.
Yes, I support the Iowa Western, or the funding for the level of the colleges now. Community colleges are basically a stepping stone to a better economy and locally, and for you to move on to a four-year college, it's essential that we educate our young people in order for us to succeed, and so that our economy can continue to move on. Thank you.
Yes, I will support the funding level, at least at the level that the Board of Education, the State Board of Education recommends. That's at a minimum. For many years, community colleges were the poor stepchild of the education system. You'll kind of see that when we get to the next question. So I'd say at a minimum, I'll support that level. I think we probably need to do some catch-up and go beyond the level that they recommend.
I think it, excuse me, I think it truly goes without saying that the Iowa legislature will always support community colleges. We understand that they are the lifeblood of many communities, and they offer opportunities that cannot be found for many of our students and many of our citizens any other place. About 5 years ago, actually before my tenure in the Iowa legislature, the state general funding for community colleges was drastically cut to meet a severe budget shortfall. And we know, and I know, that those cuts directly impacted the students here on the Iowa Western campus. So over the 4 years, in part because we've had a growing economy in this state, and in part because it was the right thing to do, the legislature, as Senator Gronstal has mentioned, both both houses, both parties have worked to increase funding dramatically to the community colleges. And in the last 4 years, that funding has gone up by more than $40 million in increased, $40 million over increased funding, which represents about a 30% increase in community college funding. Understanding that Iowa also has a skilled worker shortage, the legislature has also created a number of skilled worker initiative programs to address this worker shortage. And this is also funding of a sort that goes to community colleges, because most of these programs work with the community colleges and provide funding to help train workers to address the shortage of certain skill jobs. And we know that the education and training that community colleges offer helps to maintain a stable economic environment in our state, and that Iowa businesses then are able to grow and expand and create more jobs. The legislature continues to work, and I think I know I speak with great assurance that all of us at this table who currently hold office have supported the increases that a number of us have talked about here today. We have all voted for, we have all supported the increases to community college funding. And the legislature will continue to work to find and provide the highest funding that is possible for community colleges, given the many needs that are in our state budget. But we do commend the community colleges for using the funds that they are appropriated in an efficient and effective manner for their students.
Okay, the question was, will I support the State Board of Education's askings? And, well, you have to remember I was a member of the State Board of Education for 5 years, so maybe I don't have any kind of religion in my feelings about the State Board, but I think it's the legislature's responsibility to set those goals. Now, there is a very complicated formula of how the various community colleges are funded, and it goes back in history, and the community colleges and their organizations try to speak with one voice, but when you talk about changing that formula, you find that there's quite a bit of disagreement within the community. I think we do need to continue to support the community colleges, and particularly in the area of the apprenticeship programs and the workforce development programs. I don't think that we can perpetually keep the same formula in existence. We have to reward individual community colleges such as Iowa Western for their fine work that they do. So we will take a look at the recommendations of the State Board of Education, which basically are filtered through the governor, but it doesn't mean it will necessarily agree with every one of them. We may want to exceed them.
In my 22 years in the legislature, I've been very supportive of the community colleges. I like to do everything I can to help them. But there's also, we have to look at the total state budget. And let me tell you something, I like it being able not to cut the budget. 5 and 6 years ago, there were major across-the-board cuts because we sent out too big of a budget and the revenues did not come in. I try to live within our revenues and give the best things we can. And so with that, that's my response.
Community college state and local funding per pupil is $2,384. Grades K through 12 receives $8,429 per pupil. The regions receive $10,617 per pupil. Private colleges receive $2,965 per pupil. Is this fair? Jack Drake, please begin.
I certainly would like to see more funding for the community colleges, because some of the things I see down the road that are happening is that technology changes are coming so fast, it's hard to keep up with all your equipment that you need and the technology for teaching the students. And so I hope that we can find more money. I would also point out, though, that one of the things that's happening just recently in the last year or two, the human service budgets, the education budget used to be the #1 budget in our total budget. The human services is now bigger than the education budget. We're getting a lot of things coming down from the federal government that we have to pick up, and it's really causing a little hardship on our budget. And so I will do everything I can, but as I am, I'm very, very concerned about some of the technology equipment that you're going to have to replace and how often it is.
And the question was, is it fair? No. But it's history. And you said private colleges receive $2,965 per pupil. Well, there's a program that pays up to $5,000, and I think it's a little less than that now, for Iowa students, Iowa high school graduates who go to private colleges. So I'm not sure where that dollar figure comes from. Last year we had a interim committee on how colleges spend their money, and this is kind of echoing a little bit what Representative Drake said, but I had one of the senators who's a member of that bring us to task on our support of community colleges, because there was a formula that was created back in the 60s, and we're not living up to it. He said, why not? And I asked him, well, okay, how much did we spend on Medicaid in 1968? And he didn't know. And the answer is zero, because the program didn't exist. The program was just created that year. And now we're spending more on Medicaid than we're spending on just about every other area. So the necessities of government change as the time goes along. We need to recognize that the community college investment is important, and we need to try to keep that investment strong. But as I said earlier, you're going to hear that kind of statement out of anyone selected from this area.
At first glance, it seems that funding disparity is quite unfair. And it may be. However, I think it's important to look at the missions that each of the systems of education provide in order to perhaps come to an answer to that. The K-12 system provides free education for all students in Iowa. There is no tuition, there is no other qualifier for admission. The region's universities provide many programs and opportunities for four-year degrees and programs, graduate programs. There's a law school, there's medical school. There are a myriad of other obligations that universities can provide. Iowa's community colleges, on the other hand, provide yet different opportunities and services to Iowa students that are not provided by either the K-12 system or private or the region's universities. They fill a niche, an important niche in our community. They provide quality education and offer the opportunity to learn specific technical skills and other education that are needed to further careers. Our community colleges are uniquely positioned in communities across our state to offer targeted education to our students so that they will fill, in addition to education and many other, but they will fill jobs in areas of critical need. Iowa's community colleges, as we all know, provide a service of education that is not met by the other systems of education. And by offering quality education and training at an affordable cost, community colleges meet their mission of educating our students and community members so that they can provide the services that the state needs. Now, having said all of that, is there a need to continue to watch the funding and increase it where it can so that the mission can continue to be upheld and that new programs and opportunities can be provided? Absolutely. And I think you need to know that Iowa Western, it isn't just words for me to say that it's a shining star among our system of community colleges, because it truly is. And I know that there are legislators who have never visited, perhaps never even visited Council Bluffs, except maybe driving through, but certainly never visited the campus of Iowa Western from various parts of the state, who are aware of Iowa Western Community College. And it's because of the strong leadership you've had here. It's because of the myriad of programs that you offer, the fact that you're always looking forward and moving the ball forward to provide yet more opportunities and better chances for opportunities and different kinds of education. So the funding may not be fair at this point, but it is something that it has broad bipartisan support and will continue to be pushed as high as it can.
I was the person in the legislature about 20 years ago in the mid-90s that asked for these numbers, that asked for numbers that reflected what the investment was on a per pupil basis. As I look down the row here, and you look at these water bottles, if you're all in your own, you know, if I'm the Regents and my bottle's full, and then I look over here at K through 12, and it's a little, and that must be community colleges right there, right? So when you're in the legislature and you're dealing with budgets and you're dealing with all of those budgets in the context of really big numbers, hundreds of millions of dollars for the Regents institutions, a couple $100 million for community colleges, 2.7 or 8 billion dollars for K through 12 education. When you're in that kind of world, it's kind of hard to figure out, gee, how much more should we give this institution or that institution or another institution this year? So, and if you do it on a just straight percentage basis and give everybody 4%, well, 4% of that little bottle over there is nothing like 4% of this little bottle. So, in the mid-90s, I started asking every year for our legislative fiscal bureau, the people that do our numbers and our budgeting, to give numbers in this context. And I didn't do that to pick on the Regents. I didn't do that to start a battle between the different levels of education. I did that so that we could focus on what makes the most sense for our society. And here's what all of the studies say. All of the studies say 60% of the jobs created in the next decade are going to be jobs that need more than a high school diploma but less than a four-year degree. 60% of the jobs. And so we've got to do a better job of meeting those middle skill jobs. I talked about adult basic education and 1 out of 6 workers. If we could, and that 300,000, 1 out of 6, 300,000, if we could get half those people with high school equivalency degrees, half of them with that, and then guide them into training programs to do things like, you know, if you've driven to Des Moines anytime recently, you've seen a heck of a lot of windmills. And for every 7 or 8 windmills, you need somebody, you need one person to climb that windmill and maintain and service and repair those wind turbines in the state of Iowa. Those are the kinds of middle skill jobs we need, and that's what we're lacking in the state of Iowa right now. We've got lots of jobs, but we don't have workers that have the skills to fit into those jobs. And that's why I believe we need to continue to do a better job. Not to take money away from one institution, but we need to do a better job to fill up that bottle, because that's the jobs of the future.
Well, I looked at those figures. I look back, I'm going back in time a little bit here, when I was in high school, okay, they offered in high school classes, they offered metal shop, wood shop, print shop, welding, auto mechanics. So that when a person came out of high school, he had some of the basis to go. Of course, the community colleges weren't much around back then, but they were just getting their start. These people could go out and get a job in the trades as a timmerman. Say a person in a metal shop would go out and work for an air conditioning company and build ductwork. And welders, of course, they would go on to work at Paxton Burling Steel, Griffin Pipe, just think of a few others. They'd be able to go out and get they'd have a basis. Well, as the education system changed and pulled those out of the public schools, we had to turn to our community colleges for that. The trades are real important. As Mr. Grunstall stated, that 60% of the workforce out there does not need a 4-year degree. So the community colleges have to pick up that to teach these trades. Some of these trades seem to be vanishing as I see, like masonry, yeah, the masonry skills, the tinnermans again. We're going to need that. That's what builds all our ductwork around here. And but I do think that as I look at these figures, I think that the community college, I think it is a little weak than what they get. I think that we could probably find more funds there some way. As for the four-year colleges, your regents, that's where your instructors require a higher education to train these people like your doctors, your veterinarians, your journalists. My sister's a teacher, is a professor at Tulane University in New Orleans, and she has 2 PhDs, and that's all she can do. But she's she trains our future television and radio broadcasters, producers, and that. So those people require a higher degree of education to instruct our higher fields. And basically, we need to keep these 60% area jobs in the trades to keep people working. That's all I got.
The question is it fair? It doesn't look like it, does it? I mean, I know Iowa community colleges have one of the highest tuition rates in the country. It's a state's responsibility to provide affordable, quality education to all of our children. And I support all areas of education, K through 12, state and private colleges. They also need our support. So, thank you.
Certainly, adequate funding is really important, and we should constantly review and consider the needs and the contributions of the community colleges. And I would certainly do that on the House side, what Senator Gronstal is doing on the Senate side of constantly reviewing and looking at the broad picture with regard to how the institutions are integrated and can integrate into Iowa's economy. But I also want to look at a little bit of, it's my understanding that the formula assumes a student population count of approximately 86,000 students. Now, I know that a lot of community college student enrollments are dual enrolled. I personally know students who are still going to high school, but they're also attending community college, maybe some of you. So when they're done, not only are they getting a high school diploma, but they're going to get an associate's or maybe really close to an associate's degree, which is wonderful. But so there's some different funding sources and numbers. And remember, I told you it's really hard to find this information. But certainly K-12, absolutely important. And in my law practice, I represent a lot of kids, and one of the things that I tell those kids is, I expect you to finish at least high school, and I expect to get an invitation to your graduation, because it's extraordinarily important. And then I also talk with them often about, what about community college? Now, K-12 receives local property tax revenue, and so does the community college. So this month is Pay Your Property Tax Month. It's twice a year. And so I looked at my current property tax bill that has arrived recently in the mail. Out of curiosity, I'd never really looked at the breakdown before. So the assessed value of my residence is the same, but the taxable value reflects an increase over last year. Now, I will tell you, K-12 schools, it looks like from my tax bill anyway, gets almost 38% of my property taxes. That's the taxing authority. But this year, it will get a reduction of about 0.43%. The community college gets about 2.5% of my property taxes, but this year receives almost a 23% increase. So obviously there's some consideration going, I understand 37.67, 38% versus 2.5%. That's a huge disparity. But one is going a little bit down or maybe staying the same, and the other one's going up a little bit. And so I think that reflects how we look at all of the educational systems and how they relate and respond to our needs as an entire community. And I would continue that review, that constant review and reassessment, because it's very important. So I would, and as I said, it's confusing and it's complicated. Perhaps it could be made less complicated. But I think that it's very important to not be stagnant, and I think it's not. It's now kind of out of that stagnation, and we just need to continue that process on a regular basis.
My career has been in dealing directly with farmers and marketing, and for a 7-year period with interest in beginning farmers. And the agricultural sector of the economy, as well as the other sectors of our economy, are important for paying for all of these fundings. And so we benefit now from 5 years of improvement of the economy nationally, and when you see those trends, that's good. I look at the numbers here for community colleges, and they're clearly out of line on a per pupil basis with the others. And even if it's complicated, I think the formula needs to be looked at, and the funding of the community college needs to be improved in comparison to the other things here on the list. We've benefited from a strong agricultural economy the last few years. Anybody who knows what's going on in agriculture knows that we could be going into times that are closer from the pricing standpoint to what the farm crisis was in the 80s than what we've just seen in the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm interested in the economy as a whole and its ability to pay not only for education but all of the other things that we have in our budget.
What is your plan to fund Iowa community colleges, the workforce training of Iowa, properly? Tim Ennis.
At this point, as a challenger, I do not have a particular plan. I would examine what the options are and develop a plan that would have a greater funding and greater importance for community colleges in general across the state and for pre-kindergarten education for 4-year-olds.
I recognize that we face a skilled worker shortage, especially middle skilled jobs. Senator Gronsdahl has mentioned it a couple of times, that middle skilled jobs, they're called, are about 56%, which require more than a high school diploma, but not necessarily a 4-year degree, needing an associate's or a training certificate or an apprenticeship position. So, and enabling more Iowans to have these skills encourages companies to move or expand their businesses here. It enables workers to have good and better paying jobs, which then gives workers, to have the ability to purchase goods and services, cars, homes, a variety of goods. So how do we fund this? Well, I know there are several programs that I'm going to talk about, and these are not all of the programs. Apprenticeship training programs and expand access to internship programs and summer work programs. This is my understanding through Iowa Workforce Development, but it has to be adequately funded. So last year, I understand that there's a cap for Iowa Workforce Development Fund, and there was an attempt to raise the cap from $4 million to $6 million. That didn't happen, and it's my understanding that my opponent voted against raising that cap. With regard to job retraining and partnership with business, there's something called the Grow Iowa Value Fund and Save Our Small Business Program. There was, in 2011, the Iowa House, attempted to dismantle those programs, and the Senate kind of forced that discussion to a joint conference, and that did not happen. This year, the legislature created something called the Apprenticeship Training Program Advisory Board. And they're supposed to advise the Economic Development Authority on issues related to apprenticeships programs. The board was to be comprised of labor, business, and construction industries, and it did pass the legislature, and then the governor vetoed that item. So we kind of need to rethink some of those things and figure out how that's going to happen and get those passed. Another issue, and I've talked about this actually with a couple of people recently, is to expand access to broadband to increase availability of training in rural Iowa. The tax incentives needed for businesses and communities to expand broadband, I would support that. I don't think that's been supported in the past from this district. Thank you.
Well, the state and the community colleges need to work closely with their employers, develop courses that fills the needs for the skilled jobs available. You know, bring the employers on board with tax incentives, but with a guarantee to hire a percentage of the qualified graduates at a livable wage. Like Marty mentioned before, we need to look at that advisory board between business and labor to implement this apprenticeship program. That was vetoed. I think we should take another look at that. I think it's important. I was blessed or pretty lucky. I was a steel worker for 31 years at Griffin Pipe. And while I was there, I took a cut in pay and got into the apprenticeship program. And that's when I attended Iowa Western. I was working full time. I graduated. I learned my trade, industrial maintenance. You know, I was lucky to have that opportunity, but that was negotiated through the steel workers. Not everybody has that opportunity. And we need to expand that by bringing the employers on board and having them maybe put a little skin in the game with some guarantees, incentives. So, well, thank you.
Well, basically, my plan would be to review the plan, see what really if there needs to be improvement or expansion. For businesses or your employers that come to this state to tap our human resources and our work ethic, which I'm proud to say I believe Iowans have a really good work ethic. But we need to have some kind of an assurance that if we set up these training programs here at these community colleges with these employers, that they're going to take and they're going to hire these people and not hire somebody from Lincoln, Nebraska or somewhere. We want them to hire the people that live here in Council Bluffs that have taken these trainings, the training here at Iowa Western. Also, I think we should expand into the higher technology training for, as we talked about earlier, wind energy with solar energy, geothermal. We need to get more people involved and to learn those trades there. But that's all I really have.
Here's my plan. My plan is to get to where we are with private college students. That's about a $600 difference private colleges 2,900, community colleges 2,300. It's about a $600 difference. If you do the math, $600 on 100,000 students, we're a little under 100,000 students now. A couple years ago, we were a little above that. When the economy was bad, a lot more people come to community colleges trying to improve their skills so they can get different jobs. When the economy's good, they kind of go, okay, there's opportunity out there. I'm not going to worry about my skill level. So that kind of goes up and down. But it's a $600 difference right now. It's been bigger than that, and it's been smaller than that. I'd like us to set a goal of getting there. Now, like I said, if you do the math, 600, 100,000 students, that's 60 million bucks. Last year, we were able to provide about 8 million more in general funds for community colleges. I'm pretty sure we won't be able to get all 60 of that next year, okay, and close that gap. That's the reality. Should we? Yeah, we should. Have we neglected community colleges for too long? Yeah. But are we going to get all 60 million next year? No. But while we're in good time, and by the way, times will get bad again. I've been in this business for 32 years, and there's good years and there's bad years. In the good years, that's the time to build up the institutions that will build our economic growth into the next century. So, now's the good times. We ought to, every year, try and make progress on that goal. And I won't commit to a specific number here today, but every year we ought to do better when the economy's good. When the economy's bad, we're all going to tighten our belts. You're going to tighten your belts. The state's going to tighten their belts. Dan Kenny's going to tighten his belt out here. They'll mow the lawn less often. All of those kinds of things. But when the times are good, and times have been good the last couple of years, and we have made significant new investments in community colleges. But these are the institutions that are at the ground level in our communities. You know, in southeast Iowa, they don't have any wind turbines. The wind doesn't blow there very much. It blows quite a bit in Des Moines for obvious reasons. So we've got to have community colleges at the ground level that have enough resources to be nimble and strategic, because 15 years ago, nobody would have said we need wind turbine technicians. And in some communities, we need nurses, more nurses, a shortage of nurses. In some communities, we need vet techs for animal agriculture. It is different in every community in the state, and community colleges are the places that build our economy, give workers the skills to fit the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. So I say we start to close that gap in good years. We maybe rest a little in years when the economy's weak, but I would think over the next 5 to 10 years we ought to be able to close that gap. And so that would be my goal, to have enough resources for community colleges so they can be nimble and strategic for the jobs that come available. You know, 10 years ago, Google came to town, and you know what they do down there at the Google facility? The biggest thing they do down there is pump heat away from computer components. They need a great effort to pump heat away, and ordinary air conditioning doesn't work. They need chilled water systems. So you need a community college that's there ready, because we didn't know Google was going to come here, but ready to train workers in chilled refrigeration technology. That's why we've got to have strong community colleges if we want our economy to grow.
I believe there is a great deal of education that still needs to happen across our community and across our state that tries to help people understand that a four-year college degree is not the perfect fit for every person. There are some careers for which, yes, you do need a four-year college degree, but there are many, many jobs that are very productive jobs, very good, sustaining, earn a good living kind of jobs that do not require four-year institutions. And many of you are perfect examples of that, and many of you can be the best educators of others in our community to explain that. I have worked with the heads of our Economic Development Authority and Workforce Development and also our Department of Education to try to encourage them to remind and to get into the schools to help our guidance counselors in high school remind students that they need to look at community colleges as well when they're looking for post-high school education, because there are a lot of really, really good, well-paying jobs that can be found through two-year degrees or certificates, other kind of training through community colleges. It is a shame, in my opinion, that many Iowa businesses have to go outside of our boundaries to find workers to fill the jobs that they cannot find workers to do here. It's always been the case that you haven't always needed a four-year degree, but certainly it is the case now when we have such a critical shortage in our state of skilled workers. And we need to continue to take efforts to try to meet that gap. I serve as chair of the Economic Growth Committee in the Iowa House, and this past session I led the efforts in the House to reform Iowa's apprenticeship program. Apprenticeships are a system of training students in a trade or a profession, such as welding, with on-the-job training as well as with some classroom study and reading and so forth. And students can work with trained professionals and to get literally on-the-job training and then obtain a license to practice in a regulated profession. Our state, and in fact many states in our nation, are understanding that students who have the opportunity to work in these apprenticeship programs are given a boost in their training, in their education, and their certification for many careers, including the trades and middle skill job opportunities. Legislation was passed this past session in the Iowa legislature and signed by the governor in May that reformed Iowa's apprenticeship program. We always had an apprenticeship program, but these were reforms so that the opportunities for such programs are now available and more widespread across our state, and all of the community colleges in Iowa, including Iowa Western, Iowa Western students are able to take greater advantage of this program. So I think that we need to continue to really focus, and this means working with parents as well, and school counselors and others in the community to really educate people that community colleges offer great opportunities for lasting employment, solid jobs that not only provide personal fulfillment, but also provide skills that our state desperately needs.
Well, I would first of all challenge the leaders of our educational institution to look at any way they can transform themselves to become more efficient, to deliver more value for the dollars they have. It's easy to get into a mindset in the legislature, well, we've done this in the past, we'll just increase that a few percent. Maybe we'll throw another program in there and add a little bit of more funding. But what about rethinking the entire mission? You know, I carry this little thing around with me. It's got my email on it. It's got all my books on it. And it's got anything you want to look at. Oh, it's a phone too. And I can access the internet and I can find any information I want. In fact, now, information is free. Information is free. So why do you have to take out a mortgage to get a college education? Well, the key there is the credentialing. So if in the future, you know, if we'll look at all our educational institutions, ask them to grant credentials for knowledge you already know, for skills you already have, or to allow you to do things online. And that way, I think that we can get a little bit of a handle on these constantly increasing government expenses. Because you know, if the economy grows by 4% and we give schools 4% and we give 8% to Medicaid and 5% here and there, pretty soon the money's all gone, and the government growth gets to a point that I don't think where we want to go. So I think we need to keep our minds open to change.
Well, one of the things that's starting to happen, and will happen before too much longer, is the Revenue Estimating Conference will come out and make a prediction of how much revenue we will have to spend in the legislature. And then they review that, so we have to start out January with that number. And we have to do that according to the Code of Iowa. A little later on, they will review that again and for April, and if the revenues are higher than it was earlier, their prediction, we have to live with the earlier prediction. If it's lower, then we have to go with the lower number. And I think it's kind of interesting that we've heard a lot of talks about things, but over about the past 4 years, the community colleges have got about a 30% increase in funding. The Regents and K-12 education has had about 10%. So that it hasn't been, we've tried to do a lot of things for the community colleges. And I'm a little concerned about what the Revenue Estimating Conference might say. For example, John Deere just recently laid off 600 workers. They let off some other workers earlier down in, I think, the Moline area. And so will the revenues continue like they have been, or will they be down? So we'll have to live with whatever that number is. I'm going to go back a few years ago. We had a granddaughter that in high school in her senior year had a severe knee injury, and she went off to the University of Northern Iowa, and she was going to have her knee operated on, and she couldn't go walk to class. And so she looked at a community college, and she really looked down upon community colleges as being inferior to four-year degrees. And so she came to Iowa Western, and when she got done with Iowa Western, she said it was just as tough as it was for a four-year degree. And I might mention she is now a pharmacist. And so she had a lot of abilities, but she was very, very complimentary of the community colleges. We're going to try and do everything we can to help you. As I mentioned earlier, I know that technology is out there a lot. One of the things I mentioned, Greg, you talked about the computer things. I serve on a small company telephone board of directors out in Walnut. And you can go anywhere in our system and get high-speed internet. And let me tell you, there's a lot of changes coming out there. And so we may have to look down the road and say, how can we do things better? I know my farming career has changed a lot since I started farming. And one of the things, I also serve as the chairman of the co-chair of the Agriculture and DNR Appropriations Budget Subcommittee. And one of the things we're dealing with is the federal government has come out to the states that drain into the Gulf of Mexico and they're really coming down on us hard to reduce the nutrients. We need more money to help get some of these things done. But we're going to live within our budget, and we hope to get, and farmers have to make contributing things too. They have to do a lot of things. So I'd be terracing and maybe cover strips. And one of the things that's kind of interesting last year, we had a $2 million appropriation went out in less than 10 days in 99 counties for cost share things to reduce the nutrients. And Iowa is being looked upon right now as one of the best states. That's what they're doing. So with that, I look forward to seeing some of you probably somewhere along the line in the near future. And so with that, thank you.
Please give a round of applause to each of the legislators for participating in today's event. On behalf of the students of Iowa Western, thank you for your continued support of Iowa's community colleges. If you would like to watch this event again, tune into CBTV Channel 17 in the upcoming weeks to view the replays. Thanks for attending the 2014 Candidates Forum at Iowa Western.